Hello everybody, welcome back to another game of Rory Story Cubes. I hope you've had a good Christmas. I certainly had a fairly peaceful one, and we had a lot of good food and some interesting stories, some of which were old, but still we had some stories. Every year we have some stories to tell. Usually it's the same ones, but sometimes we have slightly new variation or just a completely new story altogether. Either way, this time I'm going to do quick our own stories like we usually do every week. I'm going to grab some dice here, 9 of them to be exact. And then we're going to roll them as usual, and then we're going to see what we can make out of it. And just like last week, perhaps we can give them a little bit of a festive theme, because we are still sort of in the holiday season. We haven't had New Year's yet. Here we go, this is 5 of them, 6, 7, 8, one more. Now, because I'm in the middle of moving, I have a lot of boxes set up everywhere, and the place where I normally put my camera is now an inadvantageous place, so I had to set everything up like this. Normally you're like this, and now you're like this, so I have to keep an eye on that when I'm actually setting up the dice, that I need to do it like this and not the other way around. Either way, here's a map, and here is somebody hanging off a parachute. Here is a swan, here is a wolf, here's somebody who's looking either scared or sick or I don't know what, they're not happy. A fountain, there is Mount Olympus. Here's a rat, moving over a little bit, because here is the crab. And as per usual, make sure to pause the video here and take a look at these dice, the pictures, combine them into a story, then write the story in the comments below so it will not be lost in the sands of time and people will actually be able to enjoy it, other than yourselves. And me included, of course. Let's see what I can make out of this. Well, it seems fairly obvious where we're going to start. We're going to start with Mount Olympus, right there. Because Mount Olympus is one of those places where you can just set up any story, because there's tons of gods that nobody's ever heard of. And there's people who used to be regular people who turned into gods because of Zeus had another affair, or whatever it was. Either way, in this case, it is a minor god who was a little bit bored over there. He hadn't really had much adventure. He'd heard about all the stories that his great uncle Zeus had gotten up to, and all the other people that were like high up in the food chain, though minor gods didn't get too much action in general either way. Whatever action you're thinking of right now, they didn't get any of that. And so he wondered if he could go out into the world and maybe explore a little. And he stole a map from one of his friends who was also there. There you go, here's the map. And X marks the spot. He had heard that there was like a swan, a magical swan that could grant wishes. And even though he was like a demigod, a minor demigod, he could do a thing or two himself. Like he could turn himself to animals of different types. But he was not able to grant wishes or make stuff appear out of nothing. So he wanted to see if he could find a swan and then make 3 wishes. Kind of like a genie, but then the Greek variety. I don't know if that thing even existed, but it does now. It does in this world. There is a swan out there that grants wishes. So he wanted to go see it. But the first thing he needed to do is get off of Mount Olympus. As you can see, it's got clouds and everything. It's a little bit difficult, but he had a solution to that, because a friend of his had snuck in a parachute. So he parachuted off Mount Olympus like that, and whee! There you go. And down on the ground he was, in the middle of the forest. He wasn't quite sure about that place, because there were wolves crying and all that sort of thing, and things creeping around in the bushes they wasn't too sure of what they were. But that's okay, he knew that the map would lead him to the place with the swan eventually, so he went and set out and followed the map. And after a day or two of following the map, instead of finding the swan, he found a fountain which had an inscription on it which only he could read. At least he and the other gods, of course. The regular mortals could not read it, and they just thought it was a very interesting and mystical fountain, and they would occasionally throw some coins in there for good luck. And he grabbed the coins because he knew that it wouldn't grant any wishes in that regard, so he could just as well use the coins for something else. Once he was done collecting the coins, he went back to the inscription, and it said, "Follow the crab." Just like that. And he wasn't quite sure what that meant, but he did notice that one of the forks in the road kind of looked like a crab. And his map directed him in the right direction of one of those forks. Like he had to take a right in that particular case, but perhaps it was wrong. So he went back on his merry way with a bunch of coins in his pocket, and he came across the area where he needed to turn left or right, and he looked at the sign, and there was indeed a sign of a crab, and it was pointing in the left direction. It's like, you need to go over there instead of over here. He was like, okay, cool. But what do I know about this fountain in particular? I mean, I know it gave me lots of coins. It didn't do anything else. But it was a script that only we can read, us being demigods and all that sort of thing. So why would they want demigods to follow the crab? What's the crab all about? So he was curious, and he went and followed the crab anyway. Instead of finding a swan at the end of the road, though, he found the crab itself. And the crab was like, I see you found a fountain. Did you perchance have any particular questions you needed answering? Because I am the crab of wisdom. And he's like, actually, I wanted to find the swan so I could get some questions, or know what I mean, wishes granted instead of answering questions. Well, says the crab, that's all well and good and everything, but if I know anything, it's that if you have wishes granted in life, you'll stop working for things because you'll find it too easy to just get things, and you probably won't be very happy with the results of the wishes anyway. Because if you manage to wish for something that you've wanted to work for or have been working for a long time and unable to accomplish it somehow, that is usually not a very good reward. So my advice to you is avoid this swan and just make sure to get all things you want through the sweat and tears of your own brow, and not because some swan gives it to you because you ask for it. And he's like, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. But still, I'd like to go and see the swan anyway. I don't really have any particular questions, other than perhaps, why is there a fountain in the middle of the forest directing people this way? Well, he says, the crab, that map you have over there was drawn by a friend of mine, and he did want to go to the swan for the different wishes, and it didn't turn out too good for him. So he decided to change the map. He built a fountain once he was done getting over his incredible misfortune as a result of his wishes. And he built the fountain there to warn people, to send them my way, because I needed to tell people to stop visiting the swan. You see, the swan, it's going to grant your wish exactly as you say it. If you wish for something, it'll give you that. Exactly that. And often people don't think well enough about their wishes before they wish them, and then they get in trouble. Because they didn't think about all the unforeseen I guess things that weren't included in their wish, or they got exactly what they wanted and it turned out to be a lot worse than they thought it would be, that sort of thing. So they need to come to me, I'm the wisdom crab, and I'll talk to them about their wishes first, and then I'll have them formulate a wish that will give them exactly what they want, and nothing is negative on the side, at least nothing unexpectedly negative on the side. Well, I says that sounds like a great idea. And so they talked for a while and talked about what type of wishes that he might want. What he wanted to wish for in particular was giant strength, just kind of like Hercules, and he wanted to be just as fast as Mercury and shoot lightning bolts like Zeus. And then the crab said, you know, if you could do all these things, then probably Zeus is going to come and hammer you down because you'll be a threat to him somehow. Because not only can you zap things like he can, you can also get out of there really quick. And on top of that, if you were to catch up with you, you'd be really strong. So I think that would make you demigod public enemy number 1. So I would advise against that. And so they kept going back and forth with ideas. And eventually he had to conclude that really all they wanted to do was just go back home. And he brought the message back from the fountain and told all of his demigod friends that maybe it wasn't such a good idea to visit the swan after all. And if you do want to visit Swan, make sure to go for the crab. So that was that. Oh, and it was Christmas, because we were going to do some type of festival thing, and we did nothing of that sort. Although I guess a lot of holidays were originally named after saints and all that sort of thing, so it's kind of festive. Or holiday-ish. Well, that was the first 9. I'm going to put them out of view, like so. And I'm going to grab the next 9 dice. Down here somewhere, okay. I think I have too many of them now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A switch or a lever. Let's see, we have somebody shaking a present or a box with a bow on it. A path leading up to the tower. We have a chest that's opening, like a treasure chest, perhaps. Somebody eating something. And we have the galaxy right here, the lever, like I said we did, a photo camera of the old variety, a frog or toad, could be either, and people having a fight. I think they're having a fight or some type of disagreement. So once again, make sure to pause the video here, look at the dice, come up with a story, post it below. I'd like to read it. Let's see what we can come up with over here. Let's see now. There once was a guy who got a present. He got a present. And he wondered what it was, and it was quite tightly wrapped, so he had to really work on getting it open. Eventually, though, it managed to open, and out came a photograph. And it was a photograph of a certain location somewhere in the universe, where there would be a tower, and there would be like lots of things there that he needed and all that sort of thing. It was a bit of an adventurous type, although he did have a steady job, so he couldn't just leave whatever he wanted. Either way, so he decided to go for it. He called his friend. Well, he thought about calling his friend, but they had a falling out earlier, so he wasn't going to call his friend in this particular adventure. He would wait until he got back to tell him about it, so that they would be jealous and then regret having a fight with him in the first place, because that meant that they missed out on the great adventure. So he set out with his spaceship to the place in the universe, because they were a space-traveling kind. And once he got to that particular planet where the picture showed him that the tower was, there you go, he lowered it to the ground. There was this lowering lever, it goes all the way down like that. And he went for the tower, which he found fairly easily because the coordinates were on the map. Oops, sorry. Then Doctor Who showed up. There you go. Like that. And he found the way in, and he found a lot of food. But he also found a frog. And he wasn't quite sure what to do with him. The photo just showed this tower that had lots of things in it that he might wanted, but one of the things he didn't want was a toad and or frog. But it turns out that the frog was actually sentient, so it started to talk to him, and he started telling him all sorts of secrets about the universe. And he thought, wow, that's really interesting, because I know a lot about the universe. We got a lot of that in our Galaxy 101 and beyond, and of course Universe 101 when they went to university. But this frog knew things about the existence of time before time and all that sort of thing, and at least it sounded like it knew a lot of things. So he took the frog back with him, all the way back to his own home planet, and he went to the regents, or the scientists there that determined how everything went into the books, or the data crystals, whatever it is that people store their information on, and he presented the frog to them, and they listened to the frog for a while. And after a while they thought, well, that's nonsense, because that's not at all what we think the universe is all about. I'm pretty sure this frog is talking nonsense. I mean, who's ever heard of a talking frog before? It must be nonsense. So they banished the frog back to the tower, because they couldn't handle all the information that the frog was spewing. And this guy, who had originally gotten the picture, wasn't really sure why they sent him the photo in the first place. But he would rather listen to the frog than sit in a society where he thought that perhaps the people who were in charge of all the science and data weren't exactly open to new things. And he would rather listen to the frog tell him about the universe all day long. So he traveled back there, and he just sat there all day long listening to the frog. And since there was lots of food there available, he could sit there for a very long time. And he did so until his very last day, in which he had learned all there was to learn about the universe and things, but there was no time to tell it to anybody else, and the scientists, in the meantime, still hadn't exactly caught up with all the information from the frog they had gotten many years before, and they probably would take many more years to get there themselves. Okay, so that was the story of the amazing, magical, universal frog, telling him lots of things that he only knew because nobody else wanted to listen. And I'm going to put these guys aside. Oh, that was Christmas. Apparently. I keep forgetting about the festive things. Maybe I should say, at the end of all this, when the scientists did actually catch up to the frog's knowledge, here they go, all the players back on the board, they made a holiday named after this guy, not the frog itself, because he was the first one to discover it and bring it to their attention, and he was miles ahead of all those peers of that day and age by doing so, because most people would probably just have dismissed it outright. So they called the day Frog Discovery Day after the great Saint Oliver, whatever his name was. So that was a holiday, and they celebrated every 100 years, which is exactly how long the guy had spent listening to the frog. And they knew that because reasons. I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna go grab 9 new dice for our last story of today. See what kind of festivities we have this time. Probably just as much as these because I keep forgetting to include it. Let's see now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the bowl and rice is back and the clown is as well. Oh, I didn't roll any of the other two. Now I'm so confused. Okay, well, I didn't roll them before, but I'm going to roll them now. I just didn't exactly bother. Not that it matters, because I didn't choose any of the other pictures either. Alright, but let's roll them now, because that is sort of officially part of the game. Oh, there we go. Here is a phone, a cell phone, as they had them in the 90s. Here's somebody who's sleeping. Here's somebody who is stealing something. Here is some fire, or a dragon, depending on how you like to have it. I'm going to put it as fire initially. And here is a looking glass. Or a spyglass. No, not a spyglass. Magnifying glass, that's what it is. Next 4. Here is a regular treasure chest. Here is stairs that go down. Not up, right? That's not possible? Nah. Unless you're like in some David Bowie land. Here is a monkey. And here is a portcullis. Or a gate to something or out of something, depending on how you look at it. Okay, now that I finally rolled the dice, I don't know why I forgot to do that the first 2 times. Make sure to pause the video here, take a look at the dice, the pictures on it, combine them into a story and post them below. I'd like to read them. Meanwhile, we're gonna take a look at this story. Once again, I see a treasure chest. This guy... Oh, wait, I'm gonna move everything back here first. Like so, this guy right here. He was sleeping one day when he got a phone call. And since it was the 90s, he took out this huge thing that had a little antenna on top, as you can see. I used to have one of those. And he answered the call, and it was a friend of his who said, hey, I got like some information that there might be treasure somewhere. Would you like to go and check it out? And he's like, oh, that's pretty cool, but why don't you go and check it out yourself if it's really not great? And he's like, well, I stole a stereo last week, and now I'm currently in jail for a couple of days, and I need to pay a fine and all that sort of thing, but I'll split whatever's in there with you for having shared this information, if that's okay with you. And he's like, okay, I guess that's okay. So he gives him all the information, and the guy Googles it, and he wonders why the guy was stealing a stereo, but other than that, he's okay. Well, fine, I guess I'll go and look for this treasure. And he ends up finding a portcullis in the middle of a forest. Just like there's trees, and suddenly there's a gate. And he wasn't quite sure how to open it, but after inspecting the area, he found that actually there was another thing there. Under some leaves and branches, there was a stairway leading down into the basement. And he couldn't see anything, so he made a torch so he could light his way. And there was another one of these things leading up a few, like 100 feet down the tunnel. And he found himself in like a city with monkeys, kind of like what you have in Thailand. Some temples have been taken over by monkeys completely. It's a little bit like that. Well, and then like a Western type castle and monkeys. Though monkeys aren't exactly native to this area, somebody one day apparently left monkeys here or had a bunch of them as pets in this castle, and they decided to breed all by themselves, even though the inhabitants had already disappeared, etc., etc. So he was like in a room with monkeys, or a courtyard, that's the word for it, with tons of monkeys sitting around looking at him oddly because they hadn't seen a human being in a long time. Or ever, depending on how old they were. Okay, so he was walking around, and he calls his friend because he's like, okay, so I'm in this place now with a courtyard full of monkeys. What do I do? Well, says this guy, you need to find another gate, because it's gotta be around here somewhere. And once you get there, you need to like light a fire in order to get the place open, because it's temperature sensitive gate. Certain irons will get like a little thicker due to the heat, making them I guess the atoms move faster is kind of how it works. The guy was also a bit of I wouldn't say a science buff, a physics buff, that's right. He's like, okay, so they had this really advanced technology that at least I understood about physics, that if you were to put a fire against this door, the metals would expand, and that would set a mechanism into place, and then everything would open up. Okay, so he's gonna start looking around, and eventually he does find the gate, as promised, And so he makes a fire. There he had the torch still. It was still burning, but he just took a bunch of bushes, put them near the gate, and then set them on fire so that the gate would open. And it did. Once inside, he found the chest as promised. So he took the chest and took it home and waited for his friend to come out of jail for stealing that stereo. No idea why, but it turned out that his friend had some type of drug habit and he needed to pay for his habits, and that meant he led a life of crime, a secret double life, because he was a high-performing addict, meaning that once he got his drug, we were able to just go and do his thing, his normal thing, and appear normal, except when he was not, and he ran out of money, he would do some crazy shit. So when they opened the chest here, it turned out that there was like a golden treasure inside, actual treasure this time, meaning that this guy could just go back to sleep without actually having to go to a job, and this guy could stop stealing because he had enough money to take care of his habits and also check himself into a place where he could like kick the habit, so he wouldn't need that anymore, and they could just both do whatever they wanted for the rest of their life. And so he did, and he was drug free, and his friend was well, free just in general. And so it was a happy end, and people were able to keep their car stereos a little bit longer than they had originally anticipated. Wow, the last sentence kind of got garbled, but you know what I mean. He didn't have to steal them, so people still had their car stereos, even many, many months after they bought them the first time. And it was Christmas. No, it was Hanukkah. Let's make it Hanukkah this time. Alright, so that's that. And they had like a festival, I guess, afterwards to celebrate all this monkey things. He decided to turn it into a public sanctuary, this monkey thing, and people went there to celebrate the Day of the Monkey, because apparently it had now become a town of monkeys, which in the location where they were was a unique thing, so they made sure to honor the monkeys once a year. No real reason, but people like to do these things, like to have traditions and all that sort of thing, so that's pretty cool, I guess. Okay, so that was 3 stories once again, the 3 times, or 2 times when I didn't roll the dice, the 3rd one I did, and I gotta say the result was just as random as if I just put them down like I did originally. So that was that. Alright, we're pushing 23 minutes. I'm gonna say thanks for watching. Make sure to post your stories below. I'll see you next week, and bye bye for now.